My name is Paula, and I live in a modest apartment in the Lakeview neighborhood of Chicago, where the wind from Lake Michigan whips against the windows like a constant wail, especially on autumn nights when the cold seeps through the cracks of the splintered wooden frames. I'm 27 years old and work as a freelance graphic designer from my living room, which I've turned into a makeshift office with a desk covered in half-finished sketches, forgotten cold coffee mugs, and tangled cables connecting my laptop and graphics tablet. My life is a predictable routine. I wake up at 7 to the annoying buzz of my phone's alarm, make a smoothie with frozen fruit that always tastes slightly bitter because I never follow the recipe exactly, and spend hours at the computer creating logos and banners for startups dreaming of being the next big tech success. At night, if I'm not exhausted from tweaking color palettes or dealing with clients demanding last-minute changes, I go running along the lakefront trail, feeling the crisp air that smells of salt water and algae, the pavement pounding under my worn-out sneakers, and the city skyline glowing in the distance like an unattainable promise. I'm not one for thrill-seeking. My idea of adventure is ordering Thai food with extra spicy curry instead of the usual pepperoni pizza. But everything changed one October night when boredom and dangerous curiosity led me to a place I should never have known about, the deep web. It was like opening a sealed door in the basement of an old house, thinking you'd only find dust and forgotten junk, but instead unleashing a monster that seeps into every corner of your life, lurking in the shadows with a suspense that steals your breath and makes you question every sound, every shadow. That night, the wind howled outside like a lost dog, battering my apartment windows with gusts that rattled the glass and brought a chill no blanket could dispel. I was curled up on my couch, an old second-hand piece I bought for $40 with unidentifiable stains I preferred not to investigate, and a musty smell that never fully went away. I'd finished a project early, a logo for a dating app promising authentic connections, but insisting on a design with spinning hearts that looked like it belonged on a 90s website, and I felt restless, as if the void after a deadline needed filling with something more than the umpteenth episode of a zombie series I'd already watched twice. I opened my laptop, its fan buzzing like a trapped insect, and started scrolling through Reddit, hopping from subreddit to kill time. r/funny for cat memes that made me laugh despite my allergies, r/aww for pictures of puppies with shiny eyes that made me wish I had one despite my chaotic schedule, until I landed on r/conspiracy. I'd always been drawn to that place, with its wild theories about the government controlling the weather, vaccines with tracking chips, or aliens hidden in underground bases in Nevada. But that night, a thread caught my attention like a beacon in the fog. The truth behind the deep web, it's not just drugs and guns. The comments were a mix of warnings and anecdotes that sounded like they came from a horror movie. Someone talked about forums selling stolen identities with names, addresses, and credit card numbers for less than a Starbucks coffee. Another mentioned rumors of red rooms where people are tortured live for bitcoins, with the audience betting like it's a macabre game. I didn't believe half the stories. I thought they were exaggerations from bored people like me, seeking attention in an anonymous forum, but the curiosity itched like a persistent tickle at the back of my neck, impossible to ignore. I Googled how to access the deep web, and within minutes, I downloaded Tor from its official site, a browser promising absolute anonymity in a world where every click leaves a digital footprint. The installation was simple, almost too easy. A green onion icon appeared on my desktop, and when I opened it, The clunky interface gave me a retro vibe, like a forgotten program from the floppy disk era. I set up a free VPN I found on an app store, naively thinking it would protect me from prying eyes, and dove in. The pages loaded with maddening slowness, each progress bar an eternity that heightened the suspense, like waiting for something to leap out of the darkness in a dimly lit basement. The first site I visited was a hidden search engine called Armia, with links to .onion sites that sounded like secret codes from a spy novel. I felt like an intruder in a forbidden world, my heart pounding in my chest, an irregular drum that echoed with every click. At first, it was almost fun, a morbid stroll through a digital neighborhood where every corner promised something new and dangerous, like exploring a street market in an unfamiliar city where vendors eye you with suspicion. I found a forum called Hidden Lounge, a place where people discuss topics without the censorship of the surface web. Global politics, with conspiracy theories about the FBI manipulating elections through secret algorithms that altered social media feeds, reviews of pirated movies unavailable on any streaming service, even threads about growing psychedelic mushrooms at home with DIY kits that included detailed instructions and photos of jars with spores. I posted under the alias Lake Shadow, inspired by my neighborhood and the way the lake reflects the city lights at dusk. Something cautious like, "New here. What sites do you recommend for starting out without getting into trouble?" The responses took ages to arrive, Tor's sluggishness turning every wait into a test of patience that had me tapping my fingers on the edge of the couch, listening to the creak of old wood under my weight. When they came, they hooked me like a fish on a line. A user named Nightcrawler99 replied with a sarcastic tone dripping with experience. "Welcome to the dark side, newbie. Try the markets for a show, but don't buy anything unless you know how to launder bitcoins and cover your digital tracks." They included a link to a .onion site promising everything the surface doesn't offer. I opened it with a knot in my stomach that tightened like an invisible fist, imagining my connection might drop at any moment, or worse, someone would knock on my door with an FBI arrest warrant. It was a virtual black market, designed like a twisted version of Amazon, with sections organized into clear, cold categories: recreational drugs, weapons, stolen data. There were blurry photos of cocaine packages wrapped in opaque plastic sealed with brown tape, ecstasy pills in Ziploc bags with handwritten labels saying, "Pure MDMA, 99% quality, lab tested," even disassembled guns ready for home assembly with attached PDF manuals explaining how to put them together in 10 easy steps. Prices were in bitcoins, accompanied by reviews from anonymous buyers that sounded disturbingly casual, like they were rating an appliance. Fast delivery to Chicago, discreetly packaged in a fake Amazon box that looked like a book order. 5 out of 5 stars. Seller recommended for beginners. I let out a nervous laugh, a hollow sound that echoed in the silence of my apartment, but a chill ran down my spine like a cold current, making me pull the blanket tighter around my shoulders to fight a cold that didn't come from the wind outside, but from something deeper. This wasn't a game. Real people were buying death and destruction from their couches, paying with digital currency that left no bank trail, and sellers answered questions like, "Do you ship to Illinois?" with chilling professionalism. "Yes, via USPS, 3 to 5 business days. Discretion guaranteed." Package disguised as a college textbook. I thought about closing the tab immediately, uninstalling Tor, and forgetting it all like a bad dream fueled by a sleepless night and too much caffeine. But my fingers moved on their own, clicking into another section labeled Digital Services. There, hackers offered full doxes, revealing someone's identity and personal data for $50, with examples of past victims, exact addresses in Chicago suburbs like Evanston or Naperville, mobile phone numbers, even stolen medical records from hacked hospital databases with details like allergies and recent prescriptions. The horror hit me softly at first, like a wave lapping at the shore of Lake Michigan, then grew, speeding my pulse until I felt it in my temples like a steady hammer pounding with every heartbeat. I closed the tab at last, shutting the laptop with a decisive click that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. But I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of my bedroom with damp stains that looked like distorted faces in the dim light, the wind howling outside like a lament of lost souls echoing my own fears. I wondered who these sellers were. Cartel drug lords in fortified Mexican mansions with armed guards, hackers in damp Eastern European basements typing under flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed like flies, or someone like me, a normal person with a dark side who'd found a lucrative outlet in the anonymity of the web. Sleep came eventually, but it was restless, plagued by dreams of navigating endless pages that closed around me like steel traps, trapping me in a digital maze with no exit, where every click was a step toward danger. The next day, I went back, as if an invisible force pushed me to the keyboard, whispering promises of revealed secrets I couldn't resist, though every fiber of my being screamed to stop. The addiction set in fast, subtle at first, disguised as mere intellectual curiosity, but growing like a virus infecting every cell until I could think of nothing else. This time, I sought darker forums, hopping from link to link with a mix of excitement and dread that made my palms sweat, leaving damp smudges on my laptop's touchpad that I wiped on my sweatshirt sleeve. I found one called Dark Whispers, a place where people shared anonymous confessions under the veil of total anonymity, confessions that on the surface web would be reported to the police or censored in minutes for violating every community guideline. The stories started mundane, almost relatable, like bar gossip, everyday infidelities like, I cheated on my boyfriend with his best friend at a Wicker Park party, and now he sends me love texts while I pretend everything's fine, but I laugh when I read his promises. Vivid details painted scenes of betrayal in bars with flickering neon lights in red and blue, spilled whiskey glasses on sticky tables, whispers in dark alleys smelling of garbage and cigarettes. But soon they turned sinister, escalating to confessions that chilled my blood until I felt a piercing cold in my bones, even with my apartment's heat cranked up, the radiator humming like an old engine. One user described with chilling precision abusing their partner, detailing blows in the kitchen of their Logan Square apartment, bruises hidden under layers of makeup she applied with trembling hands before heading to work to avoid suspicion. I hit her because she came home late from work and dinner wasn't ready. She deserves it for disobeying, for thinking she can have her own life. The comments were worse, a chorus of dark approval that churned my stomach like I'd eaten something rotten. Good job. Share pics of the bruises next time. We want to see the art nausea rose in my throat, a bitter, acidic taste that made me swallow repeatedly to keep from vomiting on the keyboard, but I kept reading, hypnotized by the abyss opening before me. It was like peering into a bottomless well of the human psyche, where morality dissolved in anonymity, and each confession was another brick in a wall of collective horror, building before my eyes on the screen, pixel by pixel. I posted, my fingers trembling on the sticky keyboard from sweat. What's the most disturbing thing you've seen here? Something that kept you up for nights? The responses froze my blood, arriving drop by drop, like slow poison injected through the screen. One mentioned red rooms, live torture streams where the audience pays to direct the show with real-time chat commands, like a sadistic video game. "Don't look if you value your sanity, newbie," they wrote, but included a vague link to a site promising immersive experiences with no ethical limits. Another spoke of child abuse forums. I saw a site selling videos of kids with descriptions of ages, nationalities, and services that make you want to tear your eyes out to unsee it. The suspense consumed me. Each word read a deeper step into a swamp I couldn't escape. My eyes glued to the screen as if a magnetic force held me, though my stomach churned and my heart pounded like it wanted to break free from my chest. I thought about stopping, wiping my browsing history, and returning to my normal life of graphic design and poorly made smoothies. But the curiosity, that damn destructive curiosity I now recognized as an addiction, pushed me. I searched for red rooms, finding fake sites with edited low-budget horror movie clips that looked like cheap film sets, but one seemed real. Detailed descriptions of scheduled sessions with UTC times adjusted for global time zones, Bitcoin prices to participate in the torture, like choosing the tool, kitchen knife, fine point hammer, electric saw, or the session's length, with options for quick or extended for maximum experience. I didn't go in, but the mere thought left me with cold sweat clinging to my skin, the apartment feeling smaller and more oppressive, the white plaster walls closing in like a claustrophobic nightmare where the air thickened with each breath, heavy as if laden with invisible dust. The following days were a blur of growing immersion and slow self-destruction, a spiraling descent I couldn't stop, though I knew it was ruining me. I set up an anonymous Bitcoin wallet, buying $100 worth on an exchange using a prepaid card from a Lakeview CVS, feeling an illicit thrill converting real money into invisible crypto, like crossing a moral line I couldn't undo without consequences, not for anything illegal at first, just to test the system and feel part of that underground world vibrating with danger in every digital corner. On an illegal betting site called Crypto Gamble, I played virtual roulette, the digital sound of the wheel spinning in my cheap earphones like a tempting whisper promising easy riches, betting small amounts of 0.01 BTC and winning $50 in a few lucky rounds that made me smile for the first time in days. The thrill was electric. The mouse click to place the bet, the suspense of the ball bouncing on the numbers with a clack-clack echoing in my ears, the balance rising on the screen with a satisfying ding that resonated in my head like a small victory. But fear crept in too, a whisper in my mind, growing like an echo in a cave. What if they tracked me? What if the site was an FBI honeypot, a trap to lure curious people like me, and then close the net with an international sting operation that would make CNN headlines? I added more security layers, Tails OS on a USB to boot a clean, anonymous operating system each time I used Tor, a paid VPN with a kill switch that cut the connection if it failed and exposed my real IP to digital predators, even a custom script I downloaded from a cybersecurity forum to detect real-time intrusions, alerting me with a shrill beep that pierced the silence if anything suspicious happened on my local network, like an unexpected open port. But on the deep web, I kept exploring with a veracity that scared me, as if an inner voice urged me to dig deeper, to unearth secrets I wasn't ready to face, each click a step closer to an abyss I couldn't see but felt beneath my feet. I became friends with the user on Dark Whispers, Shadow Lurker 87, or Lurker for short. He claimed to be from somewhere in Poland, a retired hacker now just observing for fun, living off CryptoMind back when Bitcoin was worth pennies and stored on dusty hard drives. We shared private messages on an encrypted PGP chat for extra security. He gave me practical tips like use multiple Tor relays to obfuscate your data route, disable JavaScript on unknown sites to avoid exploits that steal your session or install malware. I shared my innocent discoveries, like a pirated book forum with rare editions of novels banned in authoritarian regimes, scanned page by page with yellowed margins and handwritten notes that gave an air of authenticity. But Lurker took me deeper, sending links to sites that set my nerves on edge, each one a step further into a bottomless abyss threatening to swallow me whole. One was AbuseNet, a forum dedicated to sharing control experiences, a sick euphemism for domestic and sexual abuse that made me clench my fists until my nails dug into my palms. The posts were clinical and cold, like police reports written by the perpetrators themselves. I tied her up after she tried to leave me, taught her who's boss with a leather belt. Now she doesn't speak without my permission and cooks what I order. Blurry photos of bruised wrists, swollen faces, partially censored with black bars, accompanied the posts, some with finger marks clearly visible on pale skin. The horror hit me like a punch to the stomach, a physical pain that made me double over on the couch. I slammed the browser shut, the mouse click echoing like a gunshot, and paced my apartment in anxious circles on the creaking wooden floor under my bare feet, trying to erase the images from my mind with frantic steps that led nowhere. But I went back, always went back, drawn by the suspense of the forbidden, the thrill of knowing I was seeing something the normal world ignores or denies, a side of humanity we prefer to bury under layers of civilization, laws, and moral facades. One night, Lurker invited me to an exclusive private chat, a message that arrived with a soft but ominous ping, cutting through my apartment's silence like a knife sliding through tender flesh. Only for trusted users, he wrote in a PGP encrypted message I had to decrypt with a key he'd sent earlier. Pay 1 Bitcoin to join. Worth it if you want to see the real web. I did, transferring the cryptocurrency with trembling hands on the keyboard, feeling a rush of adrenaline mixed with nausea as the transaction confirmed on the blockchain with an irreversible lock that felt like signing a pact with the devil in fresh, warm blood. Just to watch. I'm not participating, just observing, I told myself, justifying it as morbid research that didn't directly implicate me in the evil, though my conscience screamed I was crossing a line with no return. The chat was a hidden IRC with about 10 users connected, names like Bloodfan and Crypto Killer blinking on the sidebar like digital ghosts gathered around a virtual campfire in a dark forest. The conversation started mundane, almost normal, like friends in a bar. Hey newbie, where you from? What brought you here? But they soon turned sinister, escalating to discussions about jobs with a casual tone that chilled the blood in my veins. Need to eliminate a problem in my business. 15 bitcoins for something clean. No loose ends leading back to me. Graphic details made me sweat profusely, drops falling from my forehead and fogging my glasses. Preferred method, poisoning with ricin synthesized in a home lab. No fingerprints. Delivery via USPS, disguised as an Amazon package with a fake book. I felt the suspense like a rope tightening around my neck. Each message, another knot making it harder to breathe, my chest rising and falling rapidly in my apartment's oppressive silence, where the only sounds were the radiator's hum and the wind battering the windows like a persistent intruder. I posted cautiously, my fingers slipping on the sweat-slicked keys. Is this all real, or just roleplay to scare newbies like me? Virtual laughter filled the chat, a chorus of lol and skull emojis swarming the screen. Try and see, Lake Shadow. We bet you won't last a week before running crying back to your normal life. Someone shared a video link with an innocuous title hiding its horror. Check this out, fresh content from yesterday, just uploaded. I opened it in a private window, my heart hammering in my ears like a war drum echoing in my skull. Each beat a reminder I was about to see something irreversible. It was a low-resolution clip, recorded with a shaky camera that made the image vibrate. A girl in a damp basement with cracked concrete walls and puddles of stagnant water reflecting dim light from a hanging bulb, tied to a rusty chair with nylon ropes cutting into her skin until red marks were visible, pleading in a broken voice barely audible. Please, let me go. I won't tell anyone, I swear. A masked figure entered, tall and burly, with black gloves stained with something dark, dried blood or machine oil, a black ski mask revealing only cold, calculating eyes like a predator stalking in the night under an invisible full moon. They picked up a handsaw from the floor, its metal gleaming under the yellowish light with a serrated edge promising infinite pain. The motor's hum, when started like an enraged swarm of bees, filling the audio with a menacing drone vibrating in my cheap earphones. The screams when it began were guttural, a primal sound that pierced the soul like rusted nails twisted into raw flesh, blood splattering the camera in red arcs that blurred the lens and distorted the image into a chaotic red haze burned into my retina. I closed the window instantly, the mouse click echoing like a gunshot, and ran to the bathroom, vomiting bitter bile into the sink, my stomach convulsing violently as hot tears streamed down my cheeks, mixing with the cold sweat soaking my sweatshirt. Was it fake? Actors with low-budget special effects designed to deceive? Or had I seen real abuse, a violent act funded by people like those in the chat, betting in bitcoins like a macabre poker game where the currency was human blood? The suspense turned to pure terror, a weight crushing my chest like a heavy cold concrete slab, making it hard to breathe, my mind replaying the screams in a loop, like a cursed tape I couldn't rewind or stop, echoing in my ears even when I covered them to block out the world. Paranoia began seeping into my real life, slowly at first, like water droplets falling in a dark cave, but growing into a tide that flooded every aspect of my existence, coloring every moment with an oppressive gray of constant fear. I received an email in my personal account, not the anonymous one I used for Tor, a message with an innocuous subject. Hi, Paula. But the content froze my blood. We saw you in the stream, Lake Shadow. Nice apartment in Lakeview, 1432 North Clark Street, apartment 4C. Like the coffee at Dollop. We know because we see you drinking it every morning at the window, with your red mug with a cat logo, my real name, my exact address, a specific detail of my morning routine. No one should know. Absolute terror washed over me, like an icy wave freezing my limbs, my hands shaking so badly I dropped my phone to the floor, the screen cracking in the corner with a sound like a breaking bone. How did they know? Tor promises anonymity, but what if there was a leak somewhere, a malicious script that bypassed my free VPN, like a thief in the night, stealing data while I watched complacently, unaware, exposed like an open book in an abandoned public library. I checked my system logs with analysis software I downloaded in a rush, a Trojan, malicious code installed via a dark whispers link I'd clicked thoughtlessly, designed to capture keystrokes, take screenshots, and activate my webcam without the light indicator turning on. I formatted my hard drive immediately, a long process that had me staring at the progress screen with my heart in my throat, and bought a new laptop at Best Buy, paying cash to leave no bank trail, feeling the cashier's eyes as if they knew something. But the threats continued, each more specific. Another email arrived the next day. Pay 5 bitcoins or we publish your searches, Lake Shadow. We know what you saw on AbuseNet. Attached were photos of me from my own webcam, shots of me sleeping in bed with the blanket half off, my pale face lit by the laptop's blue glow. The suspense was unbearable, each day a game of waiting for the next blow, every phone notification a stab of fear that made me jump. I changed my apartment's locks, spending money I didn't have on a locksmith who looked at me curiously while installing a high-security deadbolt. I set up cameras at my door and window, small lenses linked to my phone, promising to alert me to any movement. But the next day, they were hacked. I received live feeds of myself in my living room, sitting on the couch with my laptop, with red text overlaid. We see you, Paula. Every move. The terror consumed me, a constant knot in my stomach that stopped me from eating, my body visibly thinning in the mirror, dark circles deepening under my eyes like ink stains. One night, at 2 a.m., a loud knock on the door woke me from a restless sleep, the sound reverberating in the silence like thunder. I crept to the door, the cold floor under my bare feet, and peered through the peephole. No one, just the empty hallway, lit by a flickering fluorescent light. I opened the door a crack, my heart pounding so hard I thought the whole building could hear it, and found my mailbox broken, the metal lid bent as if pried open with a crowbar. Inside, a USB wrapped in crumpled paper, no note. I plugged it into a secure virtual machine I'd set up with a YouTube tutorial, my breath ragged as the screen loaded. It was a video, me running along the Lake Michigan Trail at dusk, recorded from a distance with a zoom lens, my blue sweatshirt clearly visible, my earphones bouncing against my chest. A digital note attached, white text on a black background. Stop, or you're next on the stream. I called 911, my finger trembling over the call button, but hung up before they answered. What would I say? I got hacked from the deep web for seeing things I shouldn't have. I knew I'd sound crazy, and the police wouldn't understand. In panic, I contacted a hacker on a cybersecurity forum, a user named Ghost Hunter. I'll help you track the culprit for 2 bitcoins, he wrote. I paid, transferring the money with sweaty hands. He traced the main hacker's IP, a dark admin, to a server in Russia. He's a pro, runs an extortion network, and worse, he said. With his help, we hacked his server. Thousands of files, videos of real victims, abuses recorded in basements like the one I saw, extortions, hit contracts for bitcoins. One file, eliminate Lake Shadow for exposing our services, reward 10 bitcoins. My real photo, taken from my webcam, my address, details of my routine, like runs by the lake Tuesdays and Thursdays at dusk. They bet in the chat. We make her disappear this week. Method, domestic accident, gas in the apartment. The suspense was suffocating. Every second an eternity, waiting for the final blow I felt coming. I fled that same night, terror pushing me to act. I packed a backpack with essentials, cash, my passport, a new prepaid phone from a gas station, and took a taxi to the Greyhound bus station in downtown Chicago. I bought a ticket to a cheap motel in Indiana, paying cash and giving a fake name, my heart racing as I watched the city lights fade through the bus window. At the motel, a place smelling of mold with rough sheets, I used a cyber cafe to contact Ghost Hunter. "Expose them," I told him. Together, we compiled dark admin's files, videos, contracts, victim names, and sent them to Interpol via an anonymous tip, using multiple proxies to avoid being traced. Days later, I saw a CNN report. Cybercrime ring dismantled in Eastern Europe. Arrests for extortion, abuse, and murder. Relief washed over me like a wave, but not completely. I still get occasional emails from unknown senders, short messages. "Don't forget, Paula. The web is deep. I live looking over my shoulder, moving cities every few months, using fake names, avoiding cameras. The terror persists. A constant whisper in the digital dark. A reminder that one wrong click unleashed a hell that never ends." The bluish glow of my laptop was the only light in my tiny Madrid apartment. It was 3:30 in the morning, and the silence of the sleeping city was broken only by the constant hum of my computer's fan. As a final year digital journalism student, I had developed a morbid fascination with the darkest corners of the internet. That night, my curiosity had taken me deeper than usual. Navigating the dark web through Tor, I had stumbled upon a forum called Forbidden Streams that promised access to live feeds that should never have been public. The interface was rudimentary. Black background, white text, and a list of links without descriptions. Just numbers. Stream 47, feed 23, night vision 156. The last one caught my attention for its more descriptive name. Salamanca Building Floor 4 Real Time. Salamanca, my neighborhood. With my heart racing, I clicked. The page took several seconds to load, and when it finally did, my blood ran cold. It was the hallway of my own building. I immediately recognized the faded floral wallpaper I'd hated since moving in 2 years ago. The worn carpet with that coffee stain that never came out. The dark wooden doors with their half-peeling golden numbers. It was unmistakably the 4th floor of my building, filmed from a low perspective, as if the camera were hidden in the baseboard. But the most disturbing part wasn't the location. It was that I could see myself. There I was, in real time, my own figure leaving my apartment 3 hours earlier to grab some dinner at the corner store. The image was grainy, black and white, but it was undeniably me. I was wearing the same gray sweatshirt I had on now. My hands trembled as I checked the timestamp. 00:47. I remembered that late-night errand perfectly. I'd forgotten to buy milk and dashed to the 24-hour shop. But who had installed that camera? And why was my life being broadcast on the dark web? I decided to test it. I got up from my desk, opened my apartment door, and peeked into the hallway. It was empty and silent, as it always was at that hour. I closed the door and hurried back to the screen. There I was, my own grainy but unmistakable image, peeking into the hallway exactly as I'd just done. The delay was only 2 or 3 seconds. The air in my apartment suddenly felt cold. I could feel the hairs on my arms standing on end. Not only had someone installed a camera in my building without my knowledge, but they were streaming my private life to strangers on the dark web. I watched the screen for the next 20 minutes, waiting to see if anyone else appeared. The hallway remained empty, but then something changed. At the far end of the corridor, near the stairwell, a shadow appeared. At first, I thought it was Mrs. Martinez from 4C, who sometimes had insomnia and went out to smoke on the landing. But this figure was different, taller, thinner, and it moved in a strange way. It didn't walk, it glided. The shadow moved slowly down the hallway, always staying just at the edge of the camera's visibility. When it reached my door, it stopped. My heart began pounding so hard I thought it might be heard on the other side of the door. The figure on the screen stood motionless, as if listening. Though the image was too grainy to make out details, I had the horrible feeling it was looking straight at the camera, straight at me. I stood up from my chair so abruptly it tipped over. The noise echoed in my small apartment like a gunshot in the silent night. On the screen, the figure tilted its head as if it had heard the chair fall through my door. That was impossible. The walls of this 60s-era building were thick. There was no way it could have heard the chair from the hallway, unless it wasn't in the hallway. With sweaty hands, I pressed my ear against the wooden door. Absolute silence. But on the screen, the figure was still there, motionless in front of my door. Then something happened that made my wood tilt. The figure slowly raised its hand and knocked on my door. Knock, knock, knock. 3 soft, deliberate knocks, and I heard them. I heard them both through the door and through my laptop speakers. I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet. The figure on the screen kept knocking, but now the knocks came from all directions, from the door, the windows, the walls, a metallic, rhythmic sound, like nails on metal. I slammed my laptop shut, plunging my apartment into total darkness, but the knocking continued. It wasn't coming from outside, it was coming from inside. I fumbled for the light switch, but when I turned it on, there was no one, just me, trembling in my empty apartment as the knocks grew louder, more insistent. That's when I saw the note. It had been slipped under my door, a white sheet of paper that definitely hadn't been there before. With trembling hands, I picked it up. In perfect, almost old-fashioned handwriting, it read, "Thank you for watching us. Now we can see you too." At the bottom of the note was a URL, a dark web address I didn't recognize. The knocking stopped. My apartment fell silent again, but it no longer felt like home. It felt like a stage, as if I were being watched from every angle by invisible eyes. I never opened that laptop again. I unplugged it, removed the battery, and stuffed it into the deepest closet I had. But every night, without fail, I heard the knocks, soft at first, then more insistent. And sometimes, when the silence of the early morning grew too heavy, I could swear I heard a voice whispering my name from the other side of the walls. I moved 3 weeks later, but the knocks followed me, because some doors once opened can never be fully closed again. I live in Los Angeles with my wife, where we've been for 15 years. We're an ordinary middle-class couple, weighed down by a suffocating mortgage and bills that never seem to shrink. My wife works as a nurse at the local hospital, and I was an IT technician for a mid-sized company. At least, I was until everything turned into a nightmare. It all started 3 years ago when the company I worked for began laying people off. The rumor of job cuts spread through the office like a virus, and I knew my position wasn't safe. Younger employees earned less, and veterans like me were expendable. Anxiety gnawed at me at night. I watched my wife pull double shifts at the hospital, exhausting herself, and I knew my salary was the only thing keeping us afloat. It was during one of those sleepless nights that I started exploring desperate options. I'd heard about the deep web at work, but always from a technical perspective as a systems administrator. I knew how to access it, how to navigate safely, and in my desperation, I thought I might find a way to make extra money. My first venture was innocent. I was looking for freelance gigs, maybe a programming project I could do in my spare time. But the deep web is like a maze that pulls you deeper and deeper. Legitimate forums gave way to darker ones, and before I knew it, I was browsing markets selling stolen data, cloned credit cards, and services I'd rather not mention. The temptation was overwhelming. I saw numbers representing more money than I'd earn in months of honest work. I told myself I was just exploring, that I'd never do anything illegal. But the bills piled up, and the fear of unemployment clouded my judgment. I found a forum called Easy Money Network, where anonymous users shared business opportunities. Most were obvious scams, but there was a section dedicated to what they called high-risk, high-reward investments. Users spoke in code, using terms I didn't fully understand, but the message was clear. You could multiply your money if you had the guts to bet big. A user with the handle GoldRush247 had posted about a cryptocurrency betting system that, according to him, had earned him thousands of dollars in a few weeks. His forum history was impeccable, with dozens of positive testimonials from other users. He sent me a private message after I commented on his post, asking how much I was willing to invest. I explained my situation, keeping it vague, but making it clear I needed money urgently. His response came hours later. He had a special opportunity for someone with my technical skills. It wasn't just about investing money, but providing a service. They'd pay me $5,000 to facilitate transfers using my IT knowledge. I should have walked away then. Every alarm in my head was blaring, but $5,000 was 2 months of my salary. I told him I needed more details. GoldRush247 explained that he worked with a group of international investors who needed to move money discreetly through multiple bank accounts. My job would be to set up automated transfer systems and handle the technical operations. All legal, he assured me, just that the investors valued their privacy. He sent me a contract via encrypted message. The language was technical, filled with financial terms that sounded legitimate. It talked about currency arbitrage, tax optimization, and portfolio diversification. To someone as desperate as I was, it sounded convincing. The first step was to open bank accounts at multiple banks using information they provide. They weren't fake accounts, he explained, but legitimate ones, registered under shell companies that technically existed. My name wouldn't appear on any documents. I'd just be the technical operator. I spent a week deliberating. My wife noticed I was distant, but I told her it was work stress. In the end, necessity trumped common sense. I agreed to the deal. The first few days were surprisingly normal. I received login credentials for several online bank accounts and specialized software to manage transfers. Money flowed constantly. Large sums came in and quickly moved out to other accounts. My job was simply to ensure the transfers ran without errors. GoldRush247 kept his word. Within a week, $5,000 appeared in my personal account. It was more money than I'd seen at once in years. I paid overdue bills, bought groceries without checking prices, and even booked a romantic dinner with my wife to celebrate my work bonus. But the euphoria didn't last. In my second week, I started noticing strange patterns in the transactions. The amounts were always round, very large figures, not the variable sums you'd expect from legitimate investments. The countries of origin and destination followed routes that made no geographic or economic sense. One night, while reviewing transaction logs, I stumbled across a name in the metadata that chilled me to the bone. One account was linked to a company that had made headlines months earlier for money laundering. I Googled the name and found news articles about federal investigations and arrests. I tried contacting Gold Rush 247, but he didn't respond for 2 days. When he finally did, his tone had completely changed. Gone was the friendly mentor who'd convinced me to join. His message was blunt and threatening. You have access to sensitive information. You'll keep working, or there will be consequences. I told him I wanted out, that I'd return the money they'd paid me. His response came with photos of my house, taken from the street, photos of my wife leaving the hospital, photos of our car at the grocery store. The message was clear. They knew where we lived. It's not that simple, he wrote. You're part of this now. You have information that could hurt very serious people. The only way out is to keep working until we decide we don't need you anymore. I panicked. I couldn't go to the police because I'd technically participated in illegal activities. I couldn't tell my wife because it would put her in danger. I was trapped. Over the next few weeks, the demands escalated. I wasn't just handling transfers anymore. Now I had to hack into smaller banking systems to speed up transactions and erase digital traces. They provided sophisticated malware and forced me to deploy it on community bank servers. The stress was killing me. I lost weight, couldn't sleep, and my wife was worried about my erratic behavior. I lied to her constantly, making up excuses about big projects at work. One day, while installing malware on a local bank system, something went wrong. Security alarms triggered, and though I managed to erase my digital tracks, I knew the intrusion had been logged. It was only a matter of time before authorities started investigating. That night, Gold Rush 247 contacted me, furious. The bank had tightened its security after my failed intrusion, ruining a larger operation they had planned. As punishment, they assigned me an even more dangerous task: infiltrate the payroll system of a large company and transfer employee pension funds. I refused outright. Stealing money meant for innocent workers' retirements was a line I wouldn't cross. Plus, that kind of operation would definitely draw FBI attention. The response came that same night, but not through encrypted messages. Someone knocked on our door at 2 a.m. My wife and I woke up startled. Through the peephole, I saw a tall man in a dark suit holding an envelope. He didn't identify himself as police or show any badge. He simply said he had a delivery for me. My wife stayed in the bedroom while I opened the door with the chain lock still on. The man handed me the envelope without a word and walked calmly to a black sedan waiting on the street. Inside the envelope were photos of my wife at the hospital, clearly taken by someone following her. There were also copies of our bank statements, personal medical records, and, most disturbingly, a photo of our house taken from inside our living room while we slept. The note with the photos was brief. You have 48 hours to complete the assigned task. No negotiation. I realized they'd been in our house. They'd entered while we slept and taken that photo as a message. The violation of our privacy, our safe space, broke me psychologically. I had no choice. Over the next 2 nights, I hacked the company's payroll system as ordered. It was a complex operation requiring multiple levels of infiltration, but my fear outweighed any moral considerations. I managed to transfer $250,000 of pension funds to offshore accounts. It was money that belonged to workers who'd saved their whole lives for retirement. I felt like the worst human being on earth. I thought completing that operation would let me go, but I was wrong. Gold Rush 247 contacted me the next day with a new task, then another, and another. Each operation was riskier than the last, and the threats against my wife grew more explicit. The situation became unbearable when they ordered me to hack a hospital's computer system. They wanted access to patient medical records for an insurance scam. The idea of compromising confidential medical information, especially knowing my wife worked in a hospital, triggered a nervous breakdown. That night, I couldn't hold back anymore. I confessed everything to my wife. I told her about the deep web, Gold Rush, 247, the threats, the stolen money. I expected her to hate me, to leave me, to call the police. Instead, she hugged me as I sobbed. She said we'd faced worse together and that we'd find a way out together. We decided to run. We liquidated our bank accounts, sold our car, and with our savings, bought plane tickets to another city. We didn't tell anyone where we were going, not even our families. But you can't escape technology when your pursuers are digital tracking experts. They found us in less than a week. This time, they didn't send messages or nighttime visitors. One day, while my wife was at her new temporary hospital job, someone broke into our rented apartment. They didn't take anything, but left a laptop open on our dining table. On the screen was a live video of my wife at work, clearly taken by someone in the hospital. The angle suggested a hidden camera in her nursing section. Someone had been following her so closely, they'd managed to install surveillance equipment at her new workplace. A text message came to my phone. Last chance. Get back to work, or she pays the price. We returned to Los Angeles the next day. For the next few months, my life was a constant nightmare. I worked as a hired hacker for a criminal organization, knowing every task I completed harmed innocent people. I stole money from working families' savings accounts, illegally accessed government databases, and facilitated transactions funding activities I'd rather not imagine. The breaking point came when they ordered me to hack an elementary school system. They wanted access to personal information on children and their families for a massive identity theft scam. I refused categorically, no matter the consequences. The consequences came fast. My wife was fired from her job after someone planted drugs in her hospital locker. The police arrested her, and though the charges were eventually dropped for lack of evidence, her professional reputation was ruined. No hospital in the city would hire her after that. I realized these weren't empty threats. These people had resources, connections, and the ability to ruin our lives in ways I hadn't even considered. That's when I made the hardest decision of my life. I compiled all the information I'd collected on Gold Rush 247 and their organization during the months I worked for them. I'd been saving copies of transactions, screenshots of conversations, and logs of every illegal operation I'd been involved in. I contacted the FBI through a criminal lawyer I found online. I explained my situation and offered to become an informant in exchange for protection for my wife and me. The investigation lasted 8 months. During that time, I continued working for the criminal organization under federal supervision, using FBI equipment to document their activities. It was the most stressful period of my life, knowing that if I was discovered, both my wife and I could end up dead. The FBI finally coordinated a series of simultaneous arrests in 6 different cities. They detained 17 people, including some big names in organized digital crime. But Gold Rush 247 was never caught. Their real identity remains a mystery. As part of my cooperation deal, I confessed to all my crimes and paid restitution for the money I'd helped steal. The total was $23,800, nearly all our savings. I also served 18 months of probation and 500 hours of community service. My wife and I had to move again, this time under the FBI's Witness Protection Program. I completely changed careers. I now work as an auto mechanic, something I learned from my father that doesn't require computer access. It's been 3 years since then, and we seem to be safe, but the paranoia never fully goes away. I obsessively check our bank statements for unrecognized transactions. I avoid computers, except for the bare essentials, and I'm always watching for black sedans that might be following us. My wife eventually found work as a nurse at a rural clinic, 2 hours from where we live now. She has to use a different name, and though her criminal record was sealed as part of our FBI deal, the shadow of what happened still affects her career. The hardest part of all this is the guilt. I know my desperation for easy money was no justification for what I did. I helped steal money from retirees, workers, and families likely struggling with the same financial hardships we faced. The harm I caused innocent people will haunt me for the rest of my life. But I also learned that the deep web isn't just a place where criminals and illegal goods hide. It's a complex ecosystem where sophisticated criminal organizations recruit desperate people like me to do their dirty work. They use our financial struggles, our fears, and our lack of options as weapons to turn us into accomplices in their crimes. If anyone reading this is considering exploring those dark corners of the internet for easy money, please reconsider. There's no such thing as easy money, only easy ways to ruin your life and the lives of those you love. The $23,800 we paid in restitution doesn't include legal fees, moving costs, or the income lost from the jobs we lost during this process. In total, that search for easy money cost us over $40,000 and nearly destroyed our marriage. But more than the money, we lost our peace of mind, our trust in the world, and part of our humanity. Those are debts no amount of money can settle. I now live every day grateful to be alive, to be free, and for my wife's strength in forgiving me and standing by me despite everything my choices cost her. But I also live with the constant awareness that somewhere, Gold Rush 247 is still operating, looking for the next desperate person willing to sell their soul for easy money. And I pray that person isn't you. I never thought something as simple as curiosity could completely destroy my life. My name doesn't matter now, and I'd prefer to keep it that way for reasons that will become clear as this story unfolds. What I can tell you is that 4 years ago, I was living a completely normal life in Denver, Colorado. I had a stable job as a software developer, a decent apartment in a quiet area, and few worries beyond the typical ones of any 30-year-old bachelor. It all started with those damned mystery boxes. I'd heard about them on various Reddit forums and other sites. They were sealed boxes you could buy without knowing what was inside. Some came from abandoned warehouses, others from pawn shops, and supposedly some even from discarded police evidence. The thrill was in not knowing what you might find, anything from valuable items to complete junk. At first, I bought a few from legitimate sites like eBay. I got some interesting stuff: old books, cheap jewelry, outdated electronics. Nothing spectacular, but it fed this little addiction to mystery I'd developed. It was like gambling, but with physical objects instead of money. Things escalated when someone on a forum mentioned that the real mystery boxes were on the deep web. According to this user, the boxes sold on mainstream sites were just the leftovers, the boring stuff. The truly interesting boxes, the ones with unique contents, could only be found through Tor. My curiosity outweighed my common sense. I set up Tor on my computer and started exploring. The first sites I found were the typical illegal markets I'd heard about in the news: drugs, weapons, forged documents. But by following links and recommendations in specialized forums, I eventually found what I was looking for. The site was called Pandora's Boxes, and its design was surprisingly professional for the deep web. They had categories for different types of mystery boxes: vintage, electronics, personal effects, estate sales, and one category that particularly caught my eye: law enforcement surplus. The description for this last category was vague but intriguing: items from closed investigations, evidence room clearances, and unclaimed property from law enforcement agencies nationwide. Contents vary widely. Not recommended for sensitive buyers, prices ranged from $50 to several thousand, depending on the size and promised rarity. I decided to start with something mid-range, a box from the law enforcement surplus category that cost $300 in Bitcoin. The description simply said, medium box, East Coast origin, case closed 2019, contents unverified. The buying process was more complicated than on mainstream sites. I had to create a Bitcoin wallet, buy the cryptocurrency through multiple exchanges to obscure the trail, and use a package forwarding service to hide my real address. The whole process took nearly 2 weeks. When the package finally arrived, it came in a plain cardboard box with no distinguishing marks. Inside was a smaller metal box, the kind used for storing documents, with a sticker bearing a barcode and the numbers evidence 47,291, closed. The box was sealed with tape that had printed text: chain of custody, do not break seal. My heart raced. This felt authentic, more authentic than I'd expected. I broke the seal with trembling hands. The first thing I saw was a clear Ziploc plastic bag, the kind police use for evidence. Inside was what looked like a damaged cell phone, its screen completely shattered and stained with what appeared to be dried blood. A sticker on the bag read, Item A, victim's phone, recovered from scene. My stomach churned. This didn't feel like just any mystery game. There were more evidence bags. One contained glass fragments, another what seemed to be hair samples. But what really disturbed me were the photographs. They were crime scene photos. I won't describe the specific details because they still give me nightmares, but they showed the interior of what appeared to be an apartment where something violent had clearly happened. The photos had evidence numbers and were taken from multiple angles, meticulously documenting every detail of the scene. At the bottom of the box was a partial case file. The first few pages had been removed, but I could see fragments of a police report. The case appeared to be a homicide that took place in Baltimore in February of 2019. The victim's name was blacked out with a marker, but I could make out that it was a 28-year-old woman. I felt sick. This wasn't what I'd expected when I bought a mystery box. This was real evidence from a real crime, the violent death of a real person. My first instinct was to get rid of everything immediately, but then I stopped to think. If this was authentic evidence from a closed case, how had it ended up for sale on the deep web? Was it legal for me to have it? Should I contact the police? I decided to investigate further before taking drastic action. I Googled news about homicides in Baltimore in February of 2019. I didn't find anything that matched exactly what I had, but that didn't mean much, considering many cases don't get significant media coverage. I put everything back in the original box and hid it at the back of my closet. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Part of me felt I had a responsibility to return these items to the proper authorities, but another part feared getting in trouble for buying potentially stolen evidence. 2 weeks passed without me doing anything about it. I tried to return to my normal routine, but the box in my closet weighed on my mind like a constant presence. Then the first letter arrived. It was an envelope with no return address, sent to my name and address, delivered with the regular mail. Inside was a single photo. Me, taken from the street as I left my apartment that morning. On the back, someone had written by hand, "We know what you have." My blood ran cold. Someone knew about the box. Someone had been watching me. Over the next few days, I became paranoid. I constantly checked my windows, looking for any sign of someone watching me. I changed my routines, taking different routes to work and avoiding predictable patterns. The second letter arrived a week later. It contained multiple photos. Me at the grocery store, entering my office building, waiting for the bus. All taken in the past few days, all from angles suggesting the photographer had been closely following me. The message this time was more direct. Return what doesn't belong to you. You have 72 hours, but return it to whom? There was no contact information, no specific instructions, just vague threats and proof that someone knew my every move. I tried contacting the website where I'd bought the box, but Pandora's boxes had completely vanished. The Tor address no longer worked, and I couldn't find any trace of its existence. The third letter was the one that truly terrified me. It contained photos of my sister leaving her house in Phoenix, over 1,650 kilometers away. My sister, who had no idea what I'd been doing. The photos clearly showed her address, her car, even her kids playing in the backyard. The message was chilling in its simplicity. Your family is our family now. I didn't sleep that night. I called my sister without explaining the details, just told her I'd had weird nightmares about her safety. I asked her to be extra careful for the next few days, to lock doors and windows, and not to open the door to strangers. She laughed, thinking I was being overprotective, but promised to be cautious. The next day, I decided to contact the police. But when I got to the station, I realized how problematic my situation would be. I'd have to explain how I'd obtained potentially stolen evidence through an illegal transaction on the deep web. And frankly, I had no real proof the threats were related to the box beyond the timing. Instead of filing a report, I took a different approach. I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus, a former Denver police detective, now working private cases. I explained my situation fully, leaving out no details about the deep web or the circumstances of the purchase. He didn't seem surprised. Apparently, he'd seen similar cases before. Marcus examined the contents of the box and confirmed it appeared to be authentic evidence. The case numbers, label formats, photographs, everything had the hallmarks of a genuine police file. Someone with access to evidence storage is selling this, he told me. Could be a corrupt employee, someone in the chain of custody, or even a larger operation. But what's clear is that whoever's behind this doesn't want this specific evidence out there. He explained that I'd likely bought evidence from a case that, though officially closed, was still sensitive to someone. Maybe the case had been closed improperly, or maybe there was corruption involved that could be exposed if the evidence was examined by the right people. The threats are real, Marcus continued. These people have enough resources to track you through Bitcoin and forwarding services, which means they're well organized. But they're also desperate, which makes them dangerous. Marcus recommended I consider turning the evidence over to federal authorities rather than local ones, as the FBI would be better equipped to protect me and investigate the larger operation. He also suggested I consider temporary relocation while the situation was resolved. But before I could take any action, things escalated dramatically. One night, while working late at my office, I got a call on my cell phone. The number was unknown, and when I answered, a distorted electronic voice spoke. "You know exactly what we want. You have 24 hours to leave it at the location we'll specify, or your sister will start getting nighttime visitors." They gave me specific coordinates for a park on the outskirts of Denver and told me to leave the entire box in a particular trash can at 3 a.m. the next night. "And don't think about contacting the police," the voice added. "We have eyes in places you can't imagine." They hung up before I could respond. That night was the longest of my life. Every option I considered seemed dangerous. If I handed over the box, I'd be helping cover up whatever these people were trying to hide. But if I didn't, my sister and her family could be in real danger. Finally, I made a decision that would change everything. I made copies of all the evidence before handing it over. Using my office scanner, I photographed every document, every label, every photo. I copied everything onto multiple storage devices and hid them in different places. If something happened to me, at least there'd be a record of what I'd found. At 3 a.m. exactly, I left the original box at the designated spot. The park was completely empty and silent. As I walked away, I saw a dark sedan slowly approach the area. I didn't stick around to see who picked it up. For a few days, I thought it was over. No more letters or threatening calls came. My sister reported everything was normal at her house. I started to relax, thinking I'd solved the problem. I was terribly wrong. A week later, Marcus, my private investigator, was found dead in his office. The official police report called it a robbery gone wrong, but I knew the truth. He'd been killed because he was involved in my case. That same night, someone broke into my apartment. They didn't take anything obvious, but the place had been meticulously searched. Every drawer, every shelf, every possible hiding spot had been examined. They left a clear message on my bathroom mirror, written in what looked like red lipstick. The copies, too. They knew I'd made copies. Somehow, they'd found out I hadn't given them everything. I didn't go back to my apartment that night. I stayed in a cheap hotel, paying cash, while planning my next move. I knew I couldn't stay in Denver. These people had shown they were capable of violence, and they clearly had enough resources to find me anywhere locally. But before I fled, there was one thing I had to do. I contacted an investigative journalist in Washington, D.C., through encrypted channels. I explained my situation and sent him copies of all the evidence I'd found. I told him that if anything happened to me, he had my full permission to publish the story. The journalist, whose name I won't mention for his safety, confirmed the evidence appeared authentic and was related to a real case. More importantly, he told me the case hadn't actually been closed, as the documents claimed. In fact, it was still an active investigation, and the evidence I'd bought had been officially reported as lost months earlier. Someone inside the Baltimore Police Department stole this evidence and sold it, he explained. There's probably high-level corruption involved, maybe even a homicide cover-up. That's why they're so desperate to get it back. He urged me to contact the FBI immediately, but I'd already decided on a different course of action. That night, I left Denver for good. I didn't go home to pack. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I just got in my car and drove north, then west, then south, changing directions randomly to confuse any trackers. I had enough money in bank accounts to survive a few months if I was careful. For the next few weeks, I kept moving, never staying in one place for more than 1 or 2 nights. I used only cash, avoided cameras when possible, and changed my appearance regularly. Eventually, I reached the Canadian border. Using documentation I'd obtained through less than legal channels during my deep web explorations, I crossed into Vancouver. Canada felt like a fresh start, but the paranoia never fully left me. For months, every stranger on the street seemed suspicious. Every unexpected phone call made me jump. Every knock on the door had me on edge. I got a job under my new identity at a small tech company. I rented an apartment in a building with good security. I tried to build a normal life, but always with one eye on the emergency exits. The journalist in Washington eventually published an edited version of the story. He didn't mention my name or many specific details, but he exposed the corruption in the Baltimore Police Department and the illegal sale of evidence on the deep web. Several officers were arrested, and the original case was reopened with a new investigation. But I knew that didn't mean I was safe. The people who killed Marcus were still out there, and they likely knew I was the source of the information that led to the arrests. After 2 years in Vancouver, I decided to move again. This time, I went farther, to a country where my pursuers would have a harder time finding me. I won't specify where, for obvious reasons. Here, I've built a new life under a new identity. I have a different job, different friends, a completely different routine. I've cut all contact with my old life, including my sister, which is probably the most painful part of this whole ordeal. But I still don't feel entirely safe. There are days when I feel like someone's watching me, nights when I hear noises I can't explain, moments when I see faces in crowds that seem vaguely familiar, like someone following me from a distance. Maybe it's paranoia. Maybe after all these years, my mind is finally playing tricks on me. Or maybe these people really have the resources and determination to keep looking for me after all this time. What I know for sure is that damned curiosity, that fascination with mystery boxes, completely destroyed the life I'd built. For 30 years, I'd been a normal person with a normal life. One transaction on the deep web changed that forever. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd contacted the FBI immediately after opening the box. Maybe I'd be in witness protection instead of a fugitive. Maybe Marcus would still be alive. Maybe my sister would know I'm okay, instead of wondering why I vanished without explanation. But I also know I'd probably be dead if I hadn't fled when I did. The deep web isn't a game. The sellers in those markets aren't harmless hobbyists selling quirky curiosities. Many of them are real criminals involved in real operations with real, deadly consequences. My story is a warning. Curiosity can be literally dangerous. Some doors are better left closed. Some boxes are better left unopened. And some mystery boxes contain mysteries that can destroy your life. Every day I spend in this new country, in this new life, is a reminder of the consequences of that one curious decision I made 4 years ago. I've gained a new perspective on life and safety, but I've lost my identity, my family, my past, and my sense of home. The peace I sought by moving so far away remains elusive. Maybe I'll never fully find it, but at least I'm alive to keep searching for it. And that, I suppose, will have to be enough. I live in a small flat in Manchester, in a red brick building in Ancoats, where the noise of trams and northern quarter bars seeps through the windows even at midnight. I'm 25 years old, working as a food delivery rider for an app, pedaling through wet streets under the constant rain that never seems to leave this city. My life is simple. I wake up late, brew a strong tea in a chipped mug I inherited from my mum, and spend my free nights watching football at the local pub or playing FIFA with mates on my worn-out sofa that smells of old beer. I'm not the type to look for trouble. My idea of excitement is an extra pint at the Old Wellington or a nighttime bike ride down Deansgate when the streets are empty. But a few months ago, on a summer night that still haunts me, I got myself into something that changed everything. My friends and I, out of pure fun and a bit of boredom, decided to explore the deep web as if it were a joke, a game for teenagers wanting to feel brave. We didn't know that opening that browser would be like unlocking a door to a dark basement, one where the shadows don't just watch you, they follow you home and creep into your mind, turning every corner of your life into a nightmare. It all started on a July night, the air heavy and humid, the kind of sticky heat that makes you sweat even when you're still. We were at my flat. Me, Liam, a workmate with a sense of humor as sharp as his scruffy beard. Sophie, an art student I met at a bar who always wears ironic slogan tees. And Tom, my best mate since school, a guy who thinks he's tech savvy because he fixed his mum's Wi-Fi once. We downed a few cans of Strongbow, empty bottles rolling across the coffee table littered with crisp crumbs, and the vibe was full of laughter and silly banter. Someone, I think it was Sophie, brought up the deep web while we were watching conspiracy videos on YouTube. They say there's stuff there you can't even imagine, she said, her eyes glinting with curiosity, like markets selling anything, or sites where messed up things happen live. Liam laughed, saying it was all a myth, a story to scare kids. But Tom, always wanting to seem clever, grabbed his laptop and said, "Come on, let's have a look," for a laugh. What's the worst that could happen? I wasn't so sure. Something in my gut twisted, like when you know you're about to do something stupid, but go along anyway to avoid being the boring one. We downloaded Tor from its official site, a process that was ridiculously easy, like installing any app. The green onion icon popped up on Tom's desktop, and when we opened it, the outdated interface, like Netscape from the 90s, made us chuckle. We set up a free VPN that Liam swore was super secure because he used it for torrenting, and we dove in, the four of us crammed around the laptop on my sofa, the machine's fan buzzing like a trapped wasp. The pages loaded slowly, each progress bar a weight that made the air feel thicker, as if we were opening a box we weren't meant to touch. At first, it felt like a game, a silly adventure that made us feel like hackers in a bad movie. We found in .onion search engine something called Hidden Wiki, with links to forums and markets with cryptic names like Shadow Bazaar or Cryptic Haven. We clicked on a forum called Dark Chat, where people talked about everything without censorship. Conspiracy theories about MI5, monitoring phones, recipes for homemade drugs using stuff you could buy at Tesco, even threads on how to hack social media accounts. We posted a message under an alias we came up with while laughing, Manclads 420. Newbies from Manchester, what's cool to check out here? The replies came slowly, but hooked us. A user, Voidwalker, said, "Go to the markets. It's like eBay, but for stuff you shouldn't want. Don't touch anything serious." They included a link to a site called Black Market X. We opened it, and the vibe in the room shifted. The laughter died down, replaced by a tense silence. It was a digital black market, organized like an online shop. Substances, hardware, services. There were pixelated photos of weed bags, disassembled guns with PDF instructions, even stolen data. Pack of 1,000 UK credit cards, £20 in BTC. The reviews were the worst, written like they were from Amazon. Delivery to Manchester in 4 days, package wrapped in a cereal box. 5 out of 5. Sophie whispered, "This is real, isn't it?" And her voice trembled slightly. A chill ran through me, as if the air in the flat had suddenly cooled, even though the window was closed. Liam wanted to keep going, saying it was just a show, but I noticed his hands shaking as he moved the mouse over the links. We clicked on services, and things got darker. Hackers offering doxes, personal info on anyone for £30, with examples of victims, addresses in Salford, phone numbers, even photos of stolen passports. We shut the laptop, saying that was enough for one night, but the mood was off. We said quick goodbyes, and when they left, I was alone, staring at the blank screen, my heart pounding like something was watching me from the other side. I couldn't resist going back. The next day, after a long shift delivering pizzas in the rain, I sat in my flat, the smell of damp from my jacket hanging by the door and the tick of the wall clock, the only sound. I fired up the laptop, booted Tor from a USB with Tails OS I'd set up using a tutorial, and went in alone. The curiosity was like an itch you can't ignore, even though you know scratching will make it bleed. I returned to dark chat, using the same alias, Manklads420, though now it was just me. The forum was more active, with new threads that set my nerves on edge. One talked about red rooms, sites where people supposedly tortured others live for cryptocurrency. They're real, but expensive, someone wrote. You pay to watch, more to participate. Another user replied with a link and a warning. Don't go in if you're not ready to lose sleep. My finger hesitated over the touchpad, but I clicked. The site loaded slowly, a black page with white text and a button. Live stream, access 0.5 BTC. I didn't have bitcoins, but the idea stuck in my head like a splinter. I spent days researching how to buy crypto without leaving a trace, using a prepaid card I got from a corner spa. I set up an anonymous wallet, feeling a rush of adrenaline converting £100 to bitcoins, like committing a small but thrilling crime. I went back to the site, but didn't enter the stream. Instead, I explored more forums, each darker than the last. On one called Abyss Confessions, people shared 6 secrets. A guy described beating his partner with stomach-churning details. I left her with a black eye because she didn't answer me quick enough, and the comments egged him on. Upload a video. We want details. Another talked about stalking an ex, using a keylogger to steal her passwords and read her messages. Each post was a stab, but I kept going, gripped by the horror, as if looking made me complicit. A week later, I met a user on Abyss Confessions, Ghostbite. He said he was from London, a programmer who explored for fun. He gave me tips. Disable JavaScript, use extra proxies, never give your real IP. We became digital friends, sending encrypted messages. He sent me a link to a private chat, only for those who really know. I paid 1 Bitcoin to join, transferring the crypto with shaking hands, knowing it was a line I shouldn't cross. The chat was a dark IRC, with users like Bloodhound and Silent Reaper. They talked about live events, things that made my skin crawl. One shared a link to a stream. Next session, 0.5 BTC, midnight special. Ghostbite egged me on. It's heavy, but you've got to see it once. Against all sense, I paid. The stream loaded on my screen. A damp room, concrete walls with black mold stains, a puddle of dirty water reflecting a flickering bulb. In the center, a man tied to a chair, his face covered by a burlap sack wet with sweat or tears, moaning beneath it. A masked figure, tall, with black gloves and a ski mask, held a kitchen knife, its blade glinting under the dim light. The stream's chat was alive, messages popping up fast. Cut the finger. 1 BTC. Burn the skin. 2 BTC. My heart pounded so hard I thought it had burst out of my chest. Then, a message in red on the screen. Save the subject for $50. Last chance. I thought it was a joke, but also a way out, a chance to redeem myself for being there. I grabbed my prepaid card, converted $50 to bitcoins in minutes, and paid, typing in the chat, "Save him, please." The masked figure looked at the camera as if seeing me, and nodded. He pulled out a gun, aimed at the man's head, and fired. The sound was a thunderclap through my headphones, blood splattering the wall like red paint. The chat exploded. "Nice twist, newbie." "Saving him means ending his suffering, idiot." I froze, my stomach lurching, vomiting into the bin by my desk. I'd paid to kill a man, thinking I was saving him. His screams, the shot, the chat's laughter, it replayed in my head like a horror film, on loop. The guilt ate me alive. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I closed Tor, trashed the Tails USB, but I couldn't erase what I'd seen, what I'd done. 2 days later, I got an email in my personal account, not the anonymous one. "Good job on the stream. Manklads 420. We know who you are. 27 Ancoat Street, flat 3B. Like the pint at the old Wellington. We saw you yesterday. My address, my routine." Terror paralyzed me, my hands shaking as I read. I checked my laptop. A Trojan installed from a link on Abyss Confessions. I formatted everything, bought a new phone with cash, but the messages kept coming. "Pay 10 BTC or you're the next participant." Photos of me at the pub, on my bike, even one from my window, my silhouette against the curtain. I changed locks, set up a camera, but they hacked it. I got a video of myself sleeping. One night, a package at my door, a USB with the video of my stream, the man dying, and a message. "Next participant, you." The guilt and fear haunt me. Every shadow in Manchester is a threat. Every email, a reminder that the deep web won't let me escape. There's a strange kind of comfort in how social media works. Everyone has a name, a profile picture, a handful of followers. It all feels trackable, manageable, but that sense of control is, in large part, an illusion. Behind the usernames and private messages, there's a part of the internet designed to keep people out. It doesn't rely on algorithms or exposure. It spreads through private servers, closed groups, and exclusive invite-only links passed from one person to another. And once someone's in, getting out isn't always straightforward. In recent years, that darkness has started to take shape. Investigators are now tracking what they describe as one of the fastest growing online threats in the world. A decentralized network driven by an ideology that's already been linked to dozens of victims across multiple countries. According to the FBI, the group 764 is known for targeting individuals online with harassment and manipulation. Their actions have caused severe emotional harm, leading some victims to experience intense distress and mental health struggles. 764 didn't start as a movement. It started with a teenager. Bradley Cadenhead was 15 when he created the group from his bedroom in Stephenville, Texas, online. He called himself Felix, using 764 for his town's zip code. But what that name came to represent spread far beyond a single place. His behavior had been escalating for years. By 13, he was put on juvenile probation for talking about shooting up a high school. The next year, he violated the terms and was sent to a juvenile facility. Probation reports showed a steady decline. Caden refused to engage in counseling. He assaulted his mother. He left home without permission and was eventually hospitalized after ingesting large amounts of Tylenol and cough syrup. Nothing improved. His world got smaller, and when it did, the internet filled the gaps. He spent most of his time online. Minecraft led him to Discord, and on Discord, he found something else. A server called Cult, spelled C-V-L-T. The group was run by a French user named Rohan and specialized in manipulating people for explicit content. According to internal Discord safety team reports, this is where Caden learned how to manipulate children. He said another user introduced him to explicit content. From there, things escalated quickly. He used what he had learned to create a new online group called 764. Using variations of the name Felix, he entered chatrooms daily, sharing harmful content and inviting others to join private spaces. Whenever he was banned, he simply made new accounts, claiming he had created hundreds just to bypass restrictions. He was even banned from multiple platforms for his behavior. Felix became notorious for harassing, threatening, and manipulating others online. He was known to target vulnerable people, pushing them toward dangerous behaviors and bragging about the harm he caused. His group began evolving beyond just online trolling. It developed a more extreme, ideological edge. The group took inspiration from an older extremist network called the Order of the Nine Angles, O9A, a violent organization combining elements of occultism and extremist ideologies. Its teachings encourage rejecting empathy, glorifying harm, and embracing cruelty as a form of power. Felix treated O9A as a blueprint, shaping 764 into a dangerous online community. 764 built its identity around the belief that systems must fall. It wasn't created to gain influence or money. It was created to cause harm. The FBI and Department of Justice say the group's goal is to destabilize society by targeting the most vulnerable people they can find. That often means children, but it's not limited to them. Their targets are chosen based on access. If someone can be broken, they're useful. Perhaps the most unsettling part is that 764 is just one piece. Around the group is a wider network of subgroups, aliases, and temporary servers. Cut City, Leak Society, Harm Nation, 303, 555, 404, Hell, and No Life Matters, to name a few. In these spaces, the ideology is less about beliefs and more about permissions. Some users invoke 09A references without knowing where they come from. Others wear them proudly, but the overlap is always there. Nazi symbolism, praise for mass shooters, sadistic memes, screenshots of abuse shared as trophies. The most violent content earns the most respect, and the more disturbing the video, the higher the status. FBI investigators have called these users violent nihilist extremists, not because they pursue a cause, but because they pursue nothing at all. For them, the endgame is total destruction. Most of the coverage focuses on the abuse, but within these groups, it's also a recruitment system. Young people are drawn in, pushed beyond their limits, and transformed until they either disappear or become part of it. It usually starts the same way. It typically begins in spaces built around pain, Discord servers centered on self-harm, forums where depression is discussed openly but rarely moderated, group chats where no one pays much attention. These are the environments the group moves through, watching quietly until someone says the right thing. A member reaches out, often seeming calm and understanding. They might pose as another teenager or talk like someone who gets it, but it was never about helping in the first place. Most of their activity happens on Discord and Telegram, though other platforms have been used at different times. Instagram, Roblox, Minecraft, even SoundCloud. Most victims are between 9 and 17 years old. Many are already struggling with mental health issues, their identity, or just being alone. And the goal is always the same. Find someone vulnerable, isolate them, and make them believe they've finally found a place where they belong. From there, it moves fast. They shift to private servers, voice calls, and screen sharing sessions. Victims are told to follow instructions, sometimes framed as a game, other times as a challenge. Occasionally, that first task crosses a line, but once it's done, that's where it begins. They ask for proof, photos or videos, something that can be kept, and once they have it, the tone changes. Messages get sharper. The victim is told that if they don't continue, their secrets will be shared, their family will be contacted, their lives will be ruined. It becomes a trap, and the only way out, they're told, is to keep going. At this point, requests turn into demands. Victims are forced to record themselves, cutting their skin. They're told to carve usernames or group names into their bodies. This is called cutting signs, a kind of branding showing who they belong to. Others are ordered to harm animals, involve siblings, create material that escalates with each video, and it's all recorded. Some members even stream the abuse live. Others organize what they call viewing parties, where victims are tormented in front of an audience. The footage is saved, archived, and traded. And the more violent it is, the more status the abuser gains, almost like a badge of honor. The victims are left traumatized. Some never report it. Others try, but by then it's too late. The group already has their information, their faces, their voices, even their school names. And even when servers are shut down, the files don't disappear. They're stored, reshared, and sometimes repurposed to lure someone else. For some, the harm ends there, but others stay, drawn deeper into the group until they're no longer just victims. Investigators say many of the most active members started as victims, lured in when they were young, manipulated and broken, then rebuilt as part of the system. They stay because they're scared or because it's the only place they feel accepted. But over time, they become recruiters, turning into what they once feared. And that's what makes this group so hard to stop. It regenerates. Since 2021, criminal cases have been opened in the United States, United Kingdom, Germany, Romania, and Brazil. Some of the worst content has been linked to a core group of users. One of them, known online as Blood Butcher, ran an invite-only channel tied directly to the Order of the Nine Angles. He's believed to be a Florida man named Angel Almeida, a dropout with a long history of arrests and a background of violence. He's not the only one. Some members write instructions, literal guides on how to manipulate and exploit, telling others what kind of girls to target, what to say, when to push, and when to escalate. These documents are shared within the group alongside folders of abuse, compilations of cutting signs, and violent memes. The platforms say they're working on it. Discord claims it shut down 130 groups and banned over 34,000 users linked to the network in a single year. Roblox says it monitors 764 themed skins and removes references when reported. Instagram and Telegram say the same. But even now, hundreds of 764 related accounts remain active. The group just moves faster. Some have been manipulated for years. Others were pulled in and discarded almost immediately, but all were changed by it. And the stories that have emerged since, both those recovered and those told by the people left behind, show just how far this really goes. The people behind these groups aren't all the same, but what connects them isn't where they come from. It's what they choose to do once they're inside. Some use threats. Others forced their victims to harm themselves, but in certain groups, the abuse focused on animals, and in one of the most widely shared cases, it was a girl known online as Holy Girl 222. She'd been active in several servers linked to Husk, one of the groups that grew out of 764. Members knew her name, her voice, and eventually, they knew what she was willing to do. In one photo, she holds a handwritten sign with the name Cut 764. In her other hand is the body of her cat, the one they'd just forced her to kill. The name belonged to Joseph Shunover, known online as Cutbox. In 2018, he was just another anonymous kid online. He spent most of his time making stick figure animations on a site called Flippanim, where he was constantly bullied. And when that didn't stop, he started looking for a way to make people take him seriously. That's when he decided to join 764. He joined the group, copied its methods, and then built something of his own, a branch called Husk. The purpose was the same: coercion, humiliation, and control. As a result, he was doxxed. With that came data about who Joseph was, old accounts, and old photos. The only images that surfaced showed him as a kid, maybe 5 or 6 years old. The documents also confirmed his family members. His sister had been arrested, according to reports, for assaulting a teacher, and when his mother died, her obituary page was found and filled with images of the girl he'd coerced, the one holding a sign with his name and her dead cat. Holy Girl 222 was also eventually doxxed and swatted. People in the group said she wanted it, that she did it for attention. But Discord logs show it wasn't her choice. She'd been forced. Another case linked to the network involved a user known as Harm. His real name was Abdullah Ali. He was based in Egypt and had been active in several servers connected to 764. He regularly posted images of animal abuse, sometimes involving animals he'd harmed himself, sometimes showing victims who'd been forced to do it by him. In one of the most well-known videos linked to his account, a girl is seen on a Discord call killing her cat in front of the camera. The audio is muted, but during the recording, a voice tagged as Harm is seen speaking. The images and videos, like many others, became part of the archive. Most victims were coerced, but not all the violence was. Nino Luciano was born on the 4th of July, 2004, in Germany. His parents were addicts. His father was in prison, and from the moment he was born, he was in withdrawal. By 6, he slept with a knife under his pillow. He had violent outbursts, and his mother described his childhood as unstable, filled with psychiatric hospitalizations and temporary housing. In 2011, he was admitted to a clinic for the first time. From there, he was moved to a residential care group and eventually sent out of the country. During that time, he was medicated daily. He said the drugs made him feel numb, like he was on another planet. The German state covered the full cost of his hospitalization, over 400 euros per day, which included therapy, psychiatric consultations, clothing allowances, and pocket money. By the time he turned 18, the total had reached nearly 900,000 euros. The support ended the day he became an adult. 10 months later, he killed someone. On the morning of the 12th of April, 2022, Nino was seen slashing the tire of a parked car in the city of Madash. He wandered the streets for hours. At one point, he offered a £1 note to an elderly man, then followed him. The man felt uneasy and ran, so Nino moved on. 2 hours later, he found someone else. On Tonish Street, a 74-year-old woman was taking out her trash. Nino approached and said hello. Then he knocked her to the ground, kicked her repeatedly, and slit her throat. He streamed the entire attack on Discord. The murder was meant to prove something. He believed it would get him into a group called MKY, short for Maniac Killers Cult, a Romania-based branch connected to 764. He'd also been active in other cells, including one called 6996, and a smaller group known as Necrant. She wasn't Roma or Jewish, but Nino claimed afterward that he thought she was, that the murder had been racially motivated. Later that night, he posted about the killing on a Telegram chat. He was arrested the next day and charged with aggravated murder, attempted murder, destruction, and possession of child sexual abuse material. In August, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 14 years in prison under an educational measure focused on rehabilitation. The court ordered he remain under psychiatric treatment as long as necessary. Similarly, a 14-year-old boy began attacking strangers at night. For a few months, he stabbed 8 people in Hässelby, Sweden, recorded it, and posted it on Telegram to gain more status and promote the Swedish branch of No Life Matters, which he ran. His victims were mostly elderly. His username was Slaughter764. He was eventually caught and charged. The SNA District Court ruled he was guilty of attempted murder after a hearing, but as he was under 15, he couldn't be convicted of the crime and simply had to pay damages of over 250,000 krona, or just over $26,000, to the man. Another name that kept coming up was Vincent Collison. He went by Yuki. He was 18 and a member of Husk. Yuki was one of the most active extortionists linked to the network. He moved through platforms like Discord, Instagram, and Roblox, and targeted minors through private messages and server invites. Once contact was made, he pushed for more. Yuki and the people around him are believed to be responsible for at least 2 suicides. One of his victims was pregnant. He threw a brick through her window, and the sudden impact caused a heart attack, killing her and her baby. Yuki also ran a service called Brick Squad, a pay-for-hire operation where people could pay him to attack someone in real life. Options included Molotov cocktails, drive-by shootings, and home invasions. His team would show up, record the damage, and send it back to whoever paid. While some found violence in action, others found it in silence. Her username was FMLK. She was 15, and as a result, her real identity is unknown. She was active in several 764 servers, spoke fluent English, and was already trusted enough to move through chats most never saw. And that's how she found him. His name was Samuel Hervey. He was 25 and grew up in International Falls, Minnesota. He studied biochemistry and began transitioning after turning 18. But after the pandemic, everything fell apart. He dropped out of college, his marriage ended, and he stopped taking his medication. By late 2020, he was admitted to a psychiatric hospital and diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. A few months after being discharged, he left the country. He ended up in Kyrgyzstan, moving between hostels in Bishkek. In early November, he created a Discord server. He called it Heroes Storm, an infamous online term used to refer to taking one's own life. His messages made his intentions clear. He talked about what he was going to do and how it would happen. Most users ignored him, and some tried to talk him out of it, but FMLK didn't. She reached out and moved the conversation to private calls. She asked for updates and told him people would be watching, that this was his chance to be remembered. Samuel's messages swung between panic and calm. One night, he said he couldn't stop crying. The next day, he said he'd bought the gasoline. On the 7th of November, he left his hostel and took a bus to Rescue Mountain, an old pilgrimage site on a mountain south of Bishkek called Tashtar Ata. He found a spot in the snow set up his phone, and set himself on fire. The entire ordeal was streamed live on a Discord call. At least 29 users were in the server as it happened, as he set up his phone, sat on the ground, prayed, and then doused himself. Some recorded, others cheered. In one clip, someone shouts the group's name, another calls her out by name. Shout out to Discord for Xanax. Shout out to 764. Shout out to everyone. Big shout out to Money and a shout out to K. And let's be real, it's loud as hell. 6323 is better than 764. That's the worst death possible, man. After Samuel's death, she took over the server. He'd made her an admin the night before. That gave her full access, and she used it. A few months later, someone told her about a girl on another server. She'd been posting about taking her own life. The girl was young, still a teenager, so FMLK reached out. She moved the conversation to her own space, the same server Samuel had created. Just like before, she pushed her toward it. 15 people watched the stream. The girl put a plastic bag over her head and filled it with helium. FMLK stayed on the call until it was over. Another incident involved Caleb Merritt. He was 21, lived in Texas, and was a member of Cult, one of the earliest groups connected to 764. He'd already been active on Discord and Instagram when he found her. She was only 12. The first messages were sent through Instagram. He eventually moved the conversation to Discord, where he invited her into a private chat room. From there, things became more intense. He convinced her to do things she didn't fully understand, making her believe it was an expression of love. In February of 2021, Merritt traveled from Texas to Virginia, staying near her home. A few days later, he encouraged her to meet him, and she left home without telling anyone. They were later found in North Carolina after an alert had been issued. When authorities spoke with her, she explained that she thought they were going to start a life together and didn't realize the seriousness of what had happened. Merritt was taken into custody, faced multiple charges, and was sentenced to a lengthy prison term. Investigators said the case highlighted the depth of manipulation that can make someone feel like they're making their own choices when they're really not. But this was only part of a larger picture. Investigators uncovered an extensive network where people shared harmful content, with some even exaggerating their actions to gain attention. Over time, these spaces also began attracting adults who were deliberately seeking this material. For example, in Michigan, a man named Richard Demore was arrested after authorities discovered he had been running a private online group where harmful exchanges took place. In Florida, another man, William John Scott Tolko Jr., was also arrested for his involvement in similar activities. This case was one of many that revealed how entire communities had formed around harmful behaviors, with new members constantly being drawn in. The first major breakthrough came in the summer of 2021, when Bradley Cadenhead, a teenager believed to have initiated the group, was arrested by the FBI. Investigators seized his laptop and charged him with multiple serious offenses, resulting in a lengthy prison sentence of 80 years. This arrest didn't immediately end the group known as 764, but it marked the beginning of a broader investigation. By 2022, the FBI's work had expanded far beyond a single individual. That fall, agents briefed European authorities at a Europol conference, revealing the vast scale of the network for the first time. Interpol soon joined in to coordinate international efforts. Over the next year, law enforcement agencies across the UK, Germany, the US, and other regions opened new cases. Europol issued a formal warning about a new type of online network built to manipulate and exploit. Discord announced it had removed over 130 servers and banned more than 34,000 accounts connected to the group. The FBI classified 764 as a top-level domestic threat, engaging all 55 field offices, while Canada's RCMP and other global agencies issued similar alerts. Even U.S. senators pressed technology companies for answers, and Telegram pledged to cooperate with investigators. By May 2025, the FBI had opened over 250 active cases. Despite major enforcement actions, arrests tied to this group continued worldwide. In January 2025 alone, multiple arrests were made in Romania, the United States, and other countries, with individuals accused of sending threats, planning violent acts, and targeting vulnerable communities. Further arrests followed in Italy, Spain, Greece, Brazil, and the UK, with authorities seizing weapons, devices, and shutting down online operations. In each case, law enforcement highlighted the group's complex structure and international reach. By April and May, additional arrests and convictions further underscored the ongoing danger posed by the network. Some members were found to be involved in large-scale schemes designed to intimidate, manipulate, and harm others, while investigators revealed that these actions were part of an organized effort spanning several countries. In total, these arrests all occurred within just 5 months, demonstrating that 764 remains active. Agencies worldwide are working tirelessly to dismantle it. For now, it continues to operate, adapt, and attract followers. If anything, this group has proven that it doesn't rely on a single leader, platform, or even a name to persist, just individuals willing to keep it alive. I'm a regular guy, in my mid-20s, born and raised in London, where I spent most of my life. When I was 18, I moved in with my girlfriend, who was a bit older than me, though that never bothered me. I left my parents' house at that age because we didn't get along. I worked as a bartender at Inferno's nightclub, an exhausting job that left me with no energy for anything else. This started to strain my relationship. I barely spent time with my girlfriend. She worked days, I worked nights, and that schedule clash complicated everything. Little by little, arguments became more frequent. One night, due to some technical issue, the club closed early. I thought I'd surprise my girlfriend. I pictured her asleep, happy to see me. Maybe we could talk, spend time together, and sort out our fights. I rushed home, changed into decent clothes, bought a bouquet of flowers, and headed straight to our flat, excited to surprise her. But when I opened the door, I saw a pair of men's shoes that weren't mine. My heart started pounding. Something inside me screamed that I was about to see something I didn't want to, something I didn't deserve. Shaking, I slowly walked toward my girlfriend's room. When I opened the door, I saw her with one of my friends. She was cheating on me. She froze when she saw me, and my friend started stammering, "It's not what it looks like. It's not what it looks like." But I couldn't process anything. Everything turned into a deafening silence. I didn't hear what they were saying, didn't understand their excuses. I was stunned, paralyzed. I didn't react, didn't say a word. I just turned around and left. There was a hotel near the flat, and I spent the whole night there. Sounds strange, doesn't it? My girlfriend was in our flat with another guy, and I was in some unfamiliar hotel. But in that moment, I couldn't face her. I didn't have the courage to look at the person I loved more than anything, the person I wanted to spend my life with. In 1 hour, everything I felt for her crumbled. The next morning, I went back to the flat, thinking she'd already be gone. How could she stay after I caught her? But there she was, still in the flat. I told her to leave as soon as possible. Without explanations, without showing remorse, with a blank expression, she packed her things and left. She didn't say a single word. I knew I couldn't stay in that flat. It was filled with memories of her, and staying there would sink me into depression. I contacted a childhood friend who had moved to Birmingham and told him everything. He said I could stay with him until my life got back on track. So, I quit my job at the club and moved to Birmingham. When I arrived, I sorted out my things and started looking for a job right away. I didn't want to be a burden to my friend, even though he understood what I was going through. While browsing online, I found a forum where people talked about finding jobs on the deep web, saying they offered good pay. Most were illegal jobs, but I wasn't looking for moral distractions. I wanted something, anything, to get me out of my situation. I watched some tutorials, downloaded what I needed, and, without a clear plan, dove into the deep web looking for work. I found ads for hitmen, arms dealers, drug traffickers. I ignored them, not because they were immoral, but because the risk of getting caught was high. Then I saw an ad that said, "Looking for a partner to dispose of bodies. Good pay, minimal risk." It caught my interest. Good money, low risk. I read more details, and the idea started to excite me. I knew the deep web wasn't the safest place to look for work, but I was desperate. All my job applications had been rejected, my confidence was shattered, and I'd lost hope. That ad seemed like an opportunity, and without thinking too much, I decided to take it. Below the ad was a phone number. I hesitated, thinking it could be a police trap to catch idiots like me, but I was so desperate that the risk didn't matter. If I got caught, I'd say I was just joking. I called, but the number was disconnected. The hope I'd felt vanished. I spent hours drinking coffee, blaming myself for the breakup, when suddenly I got a call. It was a man who called himself Partner. He explained how much the job paid, gave me an address, and said, "If you're interested, come visit me. See you soon." And he hung up. I decided to go. I had nothing to lose. Even death didn't seem like a bad option at that point. I took a taxi to the address, but when I arrived, there was nothing. No building, no person, just a dead-end alley. Just as I was about to call the guy, he called me. "Go to the woods on your right," he said. "Follow the red handkerchiefs tied to the trees every 2 or 3 steps." He hung up before I could ask anything. I told the taxi driver to leave, waited for him to disappear, and looked to my right. Sure enough, there were red handkerchiefs tied to the trees. I followed them, heading deeper into the woods. There, a man dressed casually, like any ordinary person, waved at me from a distance. I approached, he shook my hand, and said, "As you've probably guessed, I'm the one who posted the ad. Now I'm your partner. Call me T." I smiled and said, "Hi, I'm D." But he cut me off. "You don't need to give your full name. Keep it to yourself. I don't use names. I'll call you D." I nodded, feeling foolish for nearly revealing my identity in a deep web deal. T said, "Come with me. I want to show you how we'll work." He led me to a warehouse. I expected a foul stench of blood or decaying bodies, but it only smelled of chemicals. "This is our home, where we'll do everything," T said, taking me to a huge bathtub. Inside was a corpse. I looked at it without reacting, which seemed to impress him. "Not everyone stays so calm seeing a body," he said. But I already knew what I was getting into. I'd prepared myself. T pulled out several colored bottles of unlabeled chemicals, poured them over the body, and within minutes, the corpse started dissolving. "Now practice in the other tub," he said. There was another body. This was my old partner, T explained. He didn't do the job well, and this is how he ended up. I hope you take this seriously. I poured the same chemicals on the second body, and it dissolved the same way. We sat watching the bodies break down until only bones remained. We opened the drain, the liquid drained out, and we put the bones in a barrel. T poured in a flammable liquid, sealed the lid, lit a match, and tossed it through a hole. I thought the barrel would explode, but only the liquid burned. We waited, put out the fire, and the bones were left as black ash. T crushed them into a fine black powder, which we dumped into a nearby river. The process amazed me. No trace, no evidence, as if those people had never existed. I took the job. Every day, we got calls from different places. We left a body here, pick it up. T had contacts with gangs, killers, criminals. When they killed someone, they called him to handle the body. We'd go, pick up the corpse, take it to the warehouse, and make it disappear with the same process. In 1 week, I was shocked at how many clients T had. They paid me up front for each body, plus a bonus when the job was done. The work was easy, a few hours per body, and the pay was incredible, $500 per body. Little by little, I felt better mentally, even excited about the job. Everything was going well. But one day, we got a call. 2 bodies had been left in a location. We went, picked them up as usual, and took them to the warehouse. As we placed them in the tubs, I noticed a tattoo on the hand of one of the women. I didn't think much of it at first, but something unsettled me. My gut told me to look at her face. I read the tattoo. 10th of January, 2012. I froze. It was the same date my ex-girlfriend had tattooed. It was her. I shuddered. I knew she cheated on me, that she deserved something for what she did, but seeing her there, lifeless, broke me. Memories of our relationship flooded my mind. I felt dizzy, on the verge of fainting. Crying, trembling, I managed to dissolve her body. For the first time, this job tore me apart inside. I didn't sleep that night, lost in her memory, thinking maybe if I'd given her more time, if we hadn't fought, I could have saved her. The next morning, T called me. Urgent, 2 more bodies in the woods. He said whoever killed them left them there, and we had to pick them up. I went, though I was shattered. T was already there when I arrived, half an hour late. The bodies are over there. Grab them quick, he said. As I approached, I fell to my knees, screaming and crying. T ran over, asking what was wrong. Through tears, I said, "They're my parents." It was them. I didn't understand what was happening. Yes, I didn't have a good relationship with them. I'd left their house, didn't want to see them, but they were my parents, the ones who raised me. T put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Don't worry. This job forces us to be cold, but we're still human. I won't ask you to dispose of them. Go home. I'll handle it." Furious, I pushed his hand away and shouted, "Don't touch their bodies. They're my parents. You won't destroy them like that." T calmly replied, "I understand how hard this is for you, but I can't stop my work for this. If I get orders, I follow them. The least I can do is give you a few days off to calm down. Come back when you're ready, but don't interfere." I didn't say anything, just left, crying, seeing my parents' bodies. I went back to my friend's house in Birmingham. He asked what was wrong, but I didn't tell him anything. I locked myself in my room, my head about to explode. I'd seen my parents' bodies, knew what would be done to them, that they'd be made to disappear as if they'd never existed. I regretted taking that job. I had to get out of it, whatever it took. I spent 7 days planning how to escape, keeping a low profile to avoid suspicion. I went back to work with T, watching every detail of his routine, what he did during work, after work, everything. My plan depended on knowing him inside out. I noticed something odd. I didn't know where T lived. Always, after work, he'd tell me to leave, and he'd stay a bit before heading into the woods. One night, I decided to follow him. I hid and saw him wait half an hour after I left, then head into the woods. The next day, I told T there was another body, and I'd handle it alone so he could leave. "You sure?" he asked. "I've done it before. Go rest," I replied. He nodded, told me to lock up the warehouse well, and left. I followed him quietly, marking trees with bandages so I wouldn't get lost. After 15 minutes, we came out of the woods, and I saw a house in the distance. It was T's, but I made a mistake. Excited, I ran and stepped on a branch that snapped. I hid behind a tree. T looked around, but seeing nothing, assumed it was an animal and continued to his house. I returned to the warehouse, removed the bandages from the trees to leave no trace, and went home. The next day, I worked as usual, but that night, I followed T again. This time, I got close to his house and peered through a window. T was in bed, but an hour later, he got up, went to a room that looked like an office, and got a call. He talked for half an hour, visibly tense. It seemed like he was speaking to someone powerful, someone controlling him. Then he pulled out a file and reviewed it carefully. I couldn't hear, but I wanted to know what that file was and who had called him. It was clear T wasn't working alone and was part of something big. I went home, planning my next move. The next day, I decided to break into his house. While we were working, T got another call and left the warehouse. I checked his jacket, where I'd seen him keep keys. I found 2 identical house keys, took one, and replaced it with a fake so he wouldn't suspect. That night, I followed him again, but instead of going home, he took a different route in a taxi. It was my chance. I went to his house, used the key, and went straight to his office. I searched for the number that called him the previous night and wrote it down on my phone. Then I saw the file. On the cover, taped, was my name, Darren James. My heart raced. My hands shook. I was sweating. I opened the file. It had my entire life, where I studied, who my friends were, my family, my ex-girlfriend, everything. There were 4 photos, one of my ex-girlfriend, 2 of my parents, all with a cross over them, and a 4th with a circle. It was Samuel, my friend, whose house I was staying at, my only support in the world. I didn't understand. What did T want with me? Why the crosses on my family's photos? Then it hit me. T, or someone with him, had killed my ex-girlfriend and my parents. Before I could process it, I heard the front door open slowly. In the silence, the sound was deafening. I pulled out my gun, hid behind a door, and saw T enter the office, gun in hand, looking for someone. He knew I was in his house. He was in his 40s. I was in my 20s. My reflexes were better. When he passed by, I hit his head hard. He fell, not unconscious, but injured, clutching his head. I took his gun and pointed it at his forehead. "Why?" I screamed. "Why did you do it?" T, furious, said, "What are you doing? Are you crazy? Want to die?" Lower the gun, but I knew I'd caught him. I was done with his orders, with this man who killed my family. In a rage, I broke his arm. The crack of his bones echoed, followed by his screams. Before he could scream more, I shoved the gun in his mouth and demanded, "Talk, or I shoot." "Why?" T, defeated, confessed. He said when he chose me, he researched everything about me. He liked me as a partner, emotionless, loyal, discreet. But he feared I'd quit the job for my family, or, if the police caught us, I'd snitched to save them. So he killed them, everyone I cared about, to make me loyal only to him. Hearing that destroyed me. After everything you did, now it's your turn to die, I said. T begged, don't kill me. What's done is done. We can do big things, build an empire. I have projects, important contacts. He started talking about mansions, leaders, businesses, but I didn't let him finish. I fired. The gunshot rang out, and T fell dead, the gun still in his mouth. Seeing him there, lifeless, I realized what I'd done. Until that moment, I'd only hidden others' crimes. Now, I was a criminal, a murderer. There was no going back. I couldn't return to my old life, not with regret, not by turning myself in. I pulled out my phone, went to the deep web, and posted an ad, looking for a partner to dispose of a body. Good pay. Contact me if you want to join. I left my number at the end. I was never one of those people obsessed with the dark web. At 16, in high school, I had far more interesting things to do. My afternoons were spent with my friends, getting my nails done at the salon, or trying on new clothes at the mall, not wasting time surfing the internet looking for weird stuff, like the dark web. I didn't understand why anyone would want to dive into something so shady. But one day, at school, everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning, during break, when my best friend Kelly started talking about something her boyfriend, Robbie, had done. We were sitting at our usual table in the courtyard, under an old oak tree that gave us shade. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and the tuna sandwiches someone had brought for lunch. Kelly, with her curly hair pulled up in a high ponytail, leaned toward me, her eyes gleaming with a mix of curiosity and nervousness. Robbie got onto the dark web last night, she said, lowering her voice as if sharing a dangerous secret. He said it's super creepy. There are videos of cults, sacrifices, sick stuff. He said he's never seen anything so disturbing. I frowned, feeling a chill run down my spine. Why the hell would anyone want to see that stuff? It's gross, I replied, playing with the straw in my orange juice. Just thinking about it turned my stomach. Yeah, I wouldn't do it, that's for sure, Kelly said, shrugging. But her tone had a hint of curiosity, like part of her was intrigued by the idea. I brushed it off and tried to change the subject, talking about weekend plans. But at noon, during lunch, the topic came up again. We were all in the cafeteria, Kelly, Christine, Robbie, and a couple of other guys from our group. The cafeteria was buzzing with noise, trays clattering, and laughter echoing. Someone had spilled soda on the floor, and the sweet smell mixed with the greasy scent of fries. While eating my chicken salad, Christine, with her mischievous smile, brought the conversation back. You know what? Everyone's talking about Robbie's dark web challenge. Someone else should try it, she said, looking around with a raised eyebrow. No way, I exclaimed, laughing to hide my unease. I'm not going on some website full of killers and weird stuff. Are you guys crazy, or what? But then Robbie, with that know-it-all attitude that sometimes got on my nerves, leaned across the table and said, Come on, Charlotte, don't be a chicken. It's just a website. How bad can it be? You just go in, look at a couple of things, and get out. It's like a game. It's not a game, Robbie. It's disgusting and dangerous, I shot back, crossing my arms. But the rest of the group started egging me on, and before I knew it, they were chanting, Do it! Do it! Do it! Nearby tables started looking at us, and I felt my face turn red as a tomato. The pressure was unbearable. More kids joined the chant, and even some strangers in the cafeteria started laughing and pointing at me. I didn't want to look weak in front of everyone, let alone be remembered forever as the one who chickened out. "Fine, I'll do it. I'll go on that stupid website," I shouted, standing up from my chair. The cafeteria erupted in cheers and applause, like I'd just won a contest. I sat back down, furious with myself for giving in, but there was no turning back. Kelly, with a triumphant smile, said, "Perfect, but to make sure you do it, you're going to FaceTime me while you're on the site." "Don't worry, I'll tell Robbie to send you the link." I wanted to protest, but I didn't say anything. I figured I'd just close my eyes if I saw something disturbing. After all, no one was forcing me to look, just to go on the site. How hard could it be? That night, I was in my room, sitting at my desk with my laptop. My room was my sanctuary. Lavender-painted walls, photos of my friends pinned to a corkboard, and my bed covered with a floral quilt my grandma had given me. But that night, everything felt different. I got a text from Robbie with a link and the words, "Good luck." My skin prickled as I read it. It was like he knew something I didn't. I ignored the feeling and called Kelly on FaceTime. "This is so stupid, Kelly. I can't believe you guys talked me into this," I said as my laptop loaded the link. My voice trembled a bit, though I tried to sound brave. "Don't be dramatic, Charlotte. Just click a link, look at a site, and you're done. Then we'll tell everyone, and we'll laugh about it." "It'll be epic," Kelly replied, smiling from my phone screen. The link finally loaded, and a dark screen appeared with an unusual design. Dozens of bright red links filled the page, each with mysterious names like Crimson Market or No Return. My heart pounded as I hovered over the options, unsure what I was about to find. Without thinking much, I clicked on one of the links. It opened a page that looked like an auction site. At first glance, it seemed fairly simple, just text and links. But as I started to read, a chill ran through me. The page displayed information about individuals, including their names, ages, and details about their lives. My stomach tightened when I clicked on another link and saw a familiar name. My own name, Charlotte Miller. With trembling hands, I clicked it. The screen showed a photo of me, one I didn't even know had been taken. My breath caught as I realized that someone out there had information about me, details about my life, my family, my school. Fear surged through me, and I immediately called my parents. I told them everything, the challenge I'd followed online, the strange link, and the unsettling page that had my information. My parents rushed to my side. My mom contacted the police, while my dad took my laptop and examined the page himself, his expression growing more serious by the second. When the officers arrived, they explained that tracing websites like this can be very difficult because of how they're set up. They promised to keep an eye on our home, but their words offered little comfort. That night, I stayed in my parents' room, unable to sleep, my mind replaying the moment I'd seen my picture online. The next day at school, I told my friends everything. They fell silent, clearly worried and full of regret. Kelly apologized for encouraging me to click the link, and the others tried to comfort me by suggesting we spend the afternoon together to take my mind off it. Later that day, I agreed to meet them at the mall, though I still felt uneasy. Afterward, they couldn't walk me home, and my parents were both stuck at work, so I had to walk alone. As I left school and stepped onto the street, I whispered to myself, "You'll be fine, Charlotte. It's daytime. There are people around. You'll be okay." But with every step, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and I kept glancing over my shoulder as the golden light of sunset made the streets feel both beautiful and strangely quiet. Then I saw him. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a man walking behind me. He wore a dark jacket and a hood that covered part of his face. He was a few meters away, but he was walking fast, too fast. I sped up, clutching my backpack to my chest. He sped up too. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I broke into a run, not looking back, my sneakers slamming against the pavement. I ran to my house, gasping, fumbling for my keys in my backpack with trembling hands. Just as I was about to open the door, I felt a sharp sting in my shoulder. The world blurred, and everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a cold, dark room. The only sound was the hum of a computer in front of me. I was chained to the floor, with shackles on my wrists and ankles that cut into my skin every time I tried to move. The computer screen showed a Google meeting with at least 50 people, their names hidden, just numbers and strange aliases. I screamed, begged for help, but my voice only echoed in the empty room. No one on the screen responded. Some seemed to be typing, others just watched. Suddenly, a figure stepped out of the shadows behind me. He was tall, dressed in black jeans and a black hoodie that hid his face. I couldn't make out his features, only the outline of his body against the dim light from the computer. He approached slowly, his presence filling the room with an oppressive weight. He leaned toward the computer and spoke in a deep, cold voice that made my skin crawl. "How much are you offering for her?" he asked. The screen filled with numbers. 60,000, someone wrote. 80,000, another message appeared. The numbers climbed fast. 90,000, 100,000. Finally, one message stood out. 115,000. No one bid higher. The man in the hoodie spoke again. Going once, going twice. Sold. The silence that followed was deafening. My mind clouded with terror. I tried to scream again, but my voice broke. The man turned to me, and though I couldn't see his face, I felt his gaze piercing me. Then, without a word, he left the room, leaving me alone with the hum of the computer and the echo of my own fear. 2 days later, on a busy street in my city, Kelly was walking with a sign in her hand. Tears streamed down her face as she stared at the photo of a smiling girl with bright blonde hair and brown eyes. The sign read, "Missing, Charlotte Miller." Kelly stopped, her body trembling as she clutched the paper to her chest. "Charlotte, I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice broken with guilt and pain.